Hi, welcome to Mimi Makes. I'm Mimi. Today we're going to learn the basic blanket stitch. It's a simple stitch we use a lot when we make felt play food for kids or other handmade gifts. There are lots of ways to make a blanket stitch. You can find all kinds of videos showing different techniques, but this is the technique I find is most helpful when I'm making my felt food patterns to make toy food for children. I just have two pieces here of felt. I have embroidery floss. I picked a contrasting color and I'm using all 6 strands of it so that you can see this easily. When I begin, I like to hide the knot, especially when I'm making pieces of play food. So I take the 2 pieces I'm going to connect with the blanket stitch, and there's a knot at the end of my floss, and I go on the inside of the back piece and pull. That knot will be hidden inside the piece of play food. I bring the floss around and just take a simple stitch coming out as close as you can on the back to where you started. Now we've begun. The thing to remember about a blanket stitch at the beginning, so that you don't have one of these cross-eyed stitches to start, is the blanket stitch always likes to start from the middle. So just run your needle underneath that first stitch that you took. Now it's coming out from the middle and you're ready to blanket stitch. I'm going to make these stitches very large so you can see exactly how to make them. You put it in front to back at the distance you want your stitch to be. So you can determine the height by where you put the needle. Now I take the thread and wrap it behind the needle, and I like to hold it with my thumb. That helps you keep control of it. Then you pull it through, and as you finish the stitch, you can see it catches on the floss, and you have 1 stitch. Now I'll take another. Front to back, hold the needle, take the floss behind. I like to hold it with my thumb, and pull it through. Now you don't have to hold it with your thumb. Some people prefer not to. I'll show you how that works. You just bring the thread behind, the thread or the floss, and pull it out. And it turns out to be a nice stitch, just that way too. Continue. I'll do it several more times, so if you're sewing along with me, you can follow what I'm doing. I brought the floss behind the needle, and now I'm going to pull it through. And there is the blanket stitch. Let's do another, just to be sure you see exactly what I'm doing. I take the thread, put it behind the needle, and hold it. And then I pull it through. Let's talk about corners. I've prepared this smaller piece, and you can see I've done blanket stitches until we've reached a corner. Now some people just put the needle over here, pull the thread between the pieces of felt and then behind the needle and pull it through. I don't like to do it that way because that leaves the corner pieces floppy. And believe me, play food gets a lot of harsh treatment sometimes. You can hit your brother with a piece of felt food. Did you know that? So I like to have a stitch that goes to the corner. And here are 2 ways to do that. You could take a new stitch right here, take it behind your needle. This is just the same blanket stitch we've been using. Pull it through, and when you get to the very end of pulling it through, just use your thumb to guide it and put it at the corner. And then you move on a little ways away on the new side and do another basic blanket stitch. And when you get to the top, just ensure that it settles at the top, and then you have a very nice corner. Another way to do the corner, and this involves something just a little bit different, but you do a stitch here and you extend it in the direction of the row you're just finishing, like this. Whoops, we got a little knot. And then you go in the same hole, bring it around, Pull it almost all the way through, and then use your thumb to guide it to the actual corner. And then you turn and again go in the same hole. Wrap your thread behind the needle and hold it. Pull it through, and there you have, and you pull it this way a little bit, and there you have a nice little corner stitch. And you can adjust the one at the point to make it fit, and when you do, it usually will stay. And you have this nice little configuration at the corner. So these are your two options. You can have it a little more open or a little more closed. Just whichever you prefer. Usually the stitches stay put pretty well. Blanket stitch is really helpful for all kinds of felt food making and other crafts. Here we've just taken two pieces and joined them. With this piece of bread, felt bread, they're at a 90-degree angle, you can see, stitched like this. When I make felt food lettuce, I often just fold the felt and proceed almost as I did with these, just doing a blanket stitch across the way. If you do tight stitches, you'll have deeper three-dimensional effect. If you do loose stitches, it's flatter. You also can use the blanket stitch to do applique, as I have on this little pancake. You can see I just attached this to the side pieces. And talking about the colors of the floss that you used, I used a contrasting color here. Ordinarily, I would match the felt that I'm using, but I used a contrasting color in a similar way when I made this little radish slice for my salad bundle. I think it looks cute to see the little red stitches. In contrast, I used a matching color thread when I made this little whipped cream dollop. And the stitches are quite tiny, so you make them shallow on the smaller pieces. Finally, I used several techniques on this banana. For the banana peel, I used the technique we used today to join these two pieces. I also used the kind of flat join technique for the banana itself, which later was stuffed. And you'll note I used yellow thread for this, and on the inside of the peel, you can see the yellow stitches. I think they look cute. So finally, I want to end with a tip for those of you who are really particular about how regular you want your stitches to be. Now, I've said before, I think it doesn't matter. I think your grandchildren will love to play with them even if the stitches aren't perfect. And in fact, if your stitches are imperfect, people can be sure it's a handmade item, not something made by a machine. But some people really like the look of very orderly stitches, and I understand that. So for those people, I've devised this technique. You take a piece of masking tape. Masking tape is good because it's easy to remove. And you put it down on the piece you're going to be sewing at exactly the place where you want your stitches to be lined up. And then you have your height and your distance between stitches very uniform. I've even seen a woman put tape on her hand like this while she's stitching, and as she goes, she measures where she wants to put her next stitch. So that's kind of clever. I actually have seen a woman who tattooed this on her hand, but I think that's going a little far just for the sake of felt play food for your grandchildren. This is one of a series of free skills videos we have here on our Mimi Makes It Fun channel on YouTube. If you like it, we hope you'll give it a thumbs up, and please consider subscribing to our channel. We'd really appreciate it.